some games kind of fade away. They aren't the Mario 64s or the Ocarina of Times that everyone else remembers. They're those special little experiences locked away in your own memory. They're the stories that make up some irreplaceable part of you, and no one can or will understand that. So with that, let me paint the scene. On a quiet but exciting little Christmas in a small town near the countryside with the snow lightly falling, some kid opens up this game, Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. Sitting alone on a couch downstairs, once the family time finishes, he's still playing, and he plays long into the week. The weeks become months, and the months become years. Some people say that this or that is my childhood. This game fits that statement pretty well. I won't lie about this review. Nostalgia is a factor. That said, I hope you'll give some time to this review of what was once my favorite game of all time. We enter the game as the new kid, whose name is Marsh. He's recently moved to St. Evelise, a small town. He befriends a kid named Mute, who's perpetually bullied. Ritz, a headstrong young girl, stands up for them, and becomes their friend as well. The tutorial for this game is a snowball fight, which fits so perfectly into playing this game at Christmas time, at least in the small town I grew up in. Only something's funny. The AI only targets Mute, connecting gameplay to story. He's a kid with problems, and they get worse. Some kid chucks a snowball with a rock in it, and the snowball fight is cancelled. We find out that Ritz has pure white hair, and the kids make fun of her for it, like she's an old woman or something. They walk home and see a man revealed to be Mute's father begging his boss for forgiveness. This character might not seem that bad, but this scene plays out a little different in the Japanese version. Afterwards, Mute mentions he found a cool book, and Marsh invites everyone over to his house. We learn from the dialogue that Mute's mother is dead and Marsh doesn't have a dad. That's not totally true. His parents are divorced. I think this is the first time I've ever played a game with divorce in it, which was kind of important at the time. So to all the Redditors and Final Fantasy Tactics enthusiasts who hate this game for being childish,
your understanding of human emotion is childlike at best.
The gang meets up at Marsh's house where we see his crippled brother, Doned. I'm going to address a complaint right now. These kids all have problems. Some people have suggested that Marsh has no problems, but living in a family with divorce and a crippled brother leads to an abnormal family life. He easily has his own problems. Remember that, because it's coming up again later. Mute pulls out his new book that he stored in his butthole. The kids read it, and it looks almost magical. He talks about wanting to be in a game instead of real life, and honestly, what kid didn't? At least with kids who have problems like these ones, it makes sense. They leave and head to sleep, but something happens. St. Evelise changes overnight, and the kids are whisked into a fantasy land. The first thing Marsh does in the new world? Calls these guys lizards. Whoa there, bucko, I think that's racist. Seriously, lizard is a racial slur for these people. Thankfully, something saves him. Except the lizards want to fight anyway because reasons. In case you're wondering how to play this game, it's kind of like chess. With killing! You win and the lizard heals himself and gets sent to jail because it's against the law for today. Normally this scene gets shit on by the game's critics, but this scene is a key point for the whole story. Firstly, as Marsh states, the world is exactly like a game world that he's played in before. So the fighting, the crazy arbitrary laws, people getting hurt without a doctor being called, this is a game world. The rules of sense don't apply here. The game isn't going to be super heavy, but really unfortunate shit can and still will happen. And this goes deeper. Everything from the music to the visuals to the very concept of the game. This game knows what it wants to be. It wants to be a whimsical adventure in an alternate world. A release from the problems of the real world that are highlighted at the beginning. Anyway, let's talk about where Marsh goes from here. He joins a clan, which you get to name. Suddenly you get a family in the game, and it's one you can shape as you like. Turf wars exist in the game, and the call to adventure from Mont Blanc to be the strongest clan was so tempting back then. Finally, you're thrust into a game that's relatively open. You complete story missions, do side missions, train up your characters if you want to, and discover the game. So I guess I need to talk about this because it's relevant. The game doesn't require grinding in any capacity. The story is beatable just by pulling a straight run, though without some effort in skill gaining you might have a difficult time with some of the bosses later on. In short, it's a game that's just gonna let you play it. I won't lie, the game's pretty easy. Difficult parts exist, but I think the average gamer won't suffer losses. Though casual gamers might lose from not preparing here and there, Actually, older reviewers call this game painfully easy, whereas some facts call this game hard. I find it easy for the most part, but you know. This does work against the game though. If you do grind, you'll outlevel the story missions and they'll be really easy until you catch up. And the item system. Okay, this thing gets critiqued a lot, but I need to mention it. So in this game, you equip items and gain the ability on the item. You have to master it to keep it forever, and you master it by using the item until the skill's mastered. So just use it. It's good, because your new characters aren't immediately useless. Anyway, you meet Ritz, and have you noticed something yet? Yeah, the palette's brighter. Marsh isn't sad looking, Ritz is saturated. The sprites are rejuvenated by the fantasy world. It's a nice little visual metaphor. Marsh is naive though, he thinks finding her means he can go home, but no. Ritz wants to stay. What? The girl who doesn't like her normal life wants to stay in the game world? No fucking way, Marsh, that's insane. She sets herself up as a neutral agent in the game. Yeah, you're on your own. What an interesting way to place your protagonist and the player. Why would the player want to go back? And why does Marsh want to go back? Is his real life actually better? This is going to be the story's biggest problem. Marsh may or may not have motivation to leave. Maybe he's homesick, maybe he wants to see his mom and dad again. Maybe change is really hard on the kid, like many kids with anxiety, because he just moved and then lost reality itself. But Marsh doesn't give a real reason. Hold on to this, because it's coming up again later. We learn that magical wrinkles in space and time are appearing and driving monsters crazy. Marsh has to investigate because a job's a job. He finds one and fights a boss, and what do you know, the crystal inside the room is one of the threads that binds the world together. Marsh destroys it, discovering that if he can destroy all of them, he can go back home. That's kind of screwed up, isn't it? He's friends with Montblanc, right? Why would he want to destroy the world? Well, it's kind of unspecific. Marsh thinks it'll let him go home, but again, the lack of explanation of the rules of the world transformation makes this kind of gray. Also, it's dumb. Finally, we see... Oh my god, me please. Why did you have to look like an idiot? If this is your world because you're the prince and you said the magic words, why are you such a dweeb? Oh, but his dad's here and he's the judge master. Isn't that sweet? That's actually really kind of dark, taking your father from the gutter and making him to the strongest and most righteous man in the land. But his dad is fantasy dad. He isn't aware of the change. This is raising 100 questions. Moving on. Oh, that's his mom, isn't it? Yep, we're gonna have to take her away from him, aren't we?
I'm gonna kill your mom, you stupid bitch.
Anyway, Mute, in reaction to one of the crystals being destroyed, demands that his father make tougher laws. You know, that's not really an intelligent choice because it doesn't really solve the problem. It is a way, however, for the game to increase its difficulty and requirements for players strategizing superficially. But I guess they just want to make Mute a spoiled bitch villain shithead too. Actually, about that, the law system. When you break a law, depending on the law's level, you get a yellow card or a red card. Kinda silly, but whatever. Yellow cards mean punishment like no reward, loss of equipped item, etc. Red cards mean prison and a bigger fine. You can get your guys out by paying bail, which is surprisingly cheap. You can even pardon them of all amassed cards by locking them up for a few battles. It's not even really a punishment, and mostly there, it seems, to freely KO your party members later in the game for not reading the laws in the easily accessible menu, which is entirely your own damn fault if you're playing a tactical game and you don't bother reading. Hey, people who love FFT bitch about this, which is insane to me for that reason. Though it is unbalanced. The enemies can break laws too, but they very rarely do it. This guy was carded no less than 9 times and no red card, so that's great. Thankfully, the enemy obeys laws, so they often are at the same disadvantage as you. But it turns out laws can be broken. This guy, who's like the only cool person in the game, is pissed about the stronger laws without the people being fairly addressed, and decides to use his genius to make anti-law cards. Mute's dad shows up to capture him, but he activates Ezel's trap card. But Ezel believes in the heart of the cards, but he pulls his trump card and escapes.
Legalize crystal fucking
Anyway, you fight a boss who I'll mention again later. That's 2 bosses down and the world's crumbling a little more. Mute appears to Marsh and tells him to get the fuck out of his world, so it's confirmed Mute's dream world or something. Oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Point of interest, why would Marsh want to live in this world anyway when you get into it? He's in a world where he's at the mercy of his emotionally compromised friend. He just gets to be a random soldier, and what does Mute do to bullies in this world? He makes them into zombies that you stumble upon and kill mercilessly. Yeah, remember those guys? It's fun, but is that ethically sound to be just as shitty as them? I don't know. Yes and no for different people. What Mute does is understandable, but I wouldn't call it ideal, though I guess you can't expect a kid to be an enlightened master. Next, Marsh runs into Babas, Mute's personal mage. You here looking for the plot too? After possibly the worst dialogue in the game, where Babas ham-fistedly mentions that someone wants to hurt the prince, asks Marsh if he knows anything about it, and Marsh fucking subtweets that he didn't know the prince wanted the world to change like this. They fight, because that's clearly enough evidence to capture someone, and I roast Marsh and Babas alive because I could. Babas redeems himself with perhaps my favorite line in the game. The central question that this game poses is simple, though endlessly complex. What's real? I mean, can you imagine if you're watching some anime and the main character just gets sucked into this crazy new world and there's all these crazy monsters and he can like summon fire swords out of his hands and like jump 7,000 feet in the air and he's like, oh no, it's not real, no, I don't want it, I'm gonna go home now, I'm done, I'm going home, bye. Yeah, that's right, you can't imagine that shit because that guy's a fucking asshole. There is no reason why Marsh should call the world fake. It's just as real as his reality, he just has the knowledge that it isn't because the story gave it to him. Without that knowledge, his world would be lizard-filled, sword-swinging, magic-slinging Ivalice. And Mute, apparently, is happy for once. He'd take that away, for the sake of fulfilling what he calls real. And this is basically the beginning of why the message behind this game splits the room crazy fast. After killing yet another boss, he'll talk to Babas again and see a vision of Mute, and Babas just flat out asks the question, what do you not have in this world that you do in the real world? The game has a reason, but it wants to hold on to it like a big emotional secret to reveal, so I guess we'll have to wait for that. Ah yes, and next the Jags. There are 3 locations in the world that feature permadeath because they're lawless zones, no judges to help you. The game flirts with the idea, but it's only partially implemented. Honestly, given how easy it is to revive characters and how hard it is to die, permadeath doesn't sound that bad, at least considering the older game, but that's another video. Regardless, Marsh's first foray into the Jags? Mont Blanc's brother's airship was broken or something, and Marsh has to track down and literally murder the people who did it. Okay, this kid's like 12? He just goes and kills these people. What am I playing? Let's talk gameplay, because we're in the thick of it. You can play any class in the game, minus perhaps one, and do something effective. And while there are powerful combinations, they tend to break the game anyhow, so it feels better to just play whatever you want. Here, I have a Defender White Monk, who's kind of a tank, self-healer, and useful person. I'm running a Juggler for disables, and an Elementalist to accompany him, making an effective double crowd control composition. And it works! I've got a Morpher Beastmaster and a Hunter Blue Mage, which improved my monster matchup significantly, because I'm not running good magic damage to pierce their defenses. That's some of the magic for younger players in this game, but even min-maxers can find the OP combinations and just destroy everything. Back to the story though. We learn in a cutscene that Ritz hates her life because in the real world she has fucking white hair. Fuck! And Shara's like,
Hey, what the fuck are you saying?
She has pure white hair and her mom used to dye it every morning in tears before Ritz learned to do it herself. She remembers the tears and it pisses her off to this day. Why would her mom cry when Ritz had the white hair? Decently powerful scene, I think, but others consider her problems vapid. Having worked with children before, just gonna remind everyone that they're ruthless, and bullying fucking sucks. In the game world, though, laws are increasing because Mute's panicking about Marsh blowing up the crystals. The judges are capturing people virtually at random, so Marsh steps in. When Marsh gets taken in and interrogated by Sid, we finally hear Marsh's reasoning for destroying everything. Because it's a dream and also not real, I guess. I'm sorry, Marsh and the internet, because this is a highly contested issue, but is that really a good enough reason to send your friend back to being bullied? Hey, let me tell you viewers a little secret. In the Japanese version of the game, Mute's dad became an alcoholic in lieu of his wife's death. You gonna send Mute back to that, Marsh? Marsh's biggest problem, and it's coming up again by the way, is paternalism. He decides what's right for other people. And frankly, Mute has every reason not to go back. Both have reasons, even though my conjectures for Marsh's reasons are better than the later revealed ones. But my god, no wonder people hate this character. Babas says he'll stop me from stomping the blueberries, but I bop him and it's GG. Next, a vision of the old Sid appears, as though a tear between worlds is showing up for plot convenience. And then, he remembers the truth? So he wasn't Fantasy Dad, he was real Dad? So the bullies were actually made zombies and I killed them? Who did I kill in the Jags? These questions will never be answered unless I tweet at the game designer. So Sid leaves the palace and his son, like a good father would, and basically turns into Ritz, only relevant when the plot demands. Mute replaces his dad with this guy named Lednar Twem. Are you fucking kidding me, Square? Mute Randall? Lednar Twem? He looks more like Marsh than Mute, for fuck's sake. That's your stupid, dumb fanfiction character? I thought this was cool when I was 13. Now it's just obnoxious because it's basically a legitimization of overpowered DeviantArt Mary Sue OCs. Oh, and he's powerful. He's apparently the distillation of Mute's most violent aspect. They literally stole that from DeviantArt. He can't take damage, and your early battles with him consist of running away for like 4 turns. These battles are unremarkable, though they're supposed to show that Mute is the master of this world and you really can't step to that. Good for themes, boring for gameplay. The final Totema is a fairly difficult boss fight. Honestly, I had to stop rushing and play some missions because up until that point, I just zerged story mode basically. So it still requires some play for my particular team comp, but the game is still pretty easy regardless. All the boss fights though, they're pretty decent in general. 3 of them are monsters and 1 really big one, and 2 are multiple target destructions. The Ultima fight actually requires strategy or cheesing laws to break it. The Exodus fight is a straight 1v1 with Babas. The Adramelech fight and the Mateus fight are basically hard DPS checks. Famfrit's just a nice intro. In general, I think they are well designed and were decent challenges. Apparently the world is still wanted, according to Remedy. That's Mute's mom, by the way. Even Marsh wants to be there, according to her. So why even bother with the plot thread of the world threads? It's just pointless. Like it advances the plot. But is that the only way they could do it? It's so impersonal. Ah, but we're missing a protagonist, aren't we? Where's Doned? He's here now, in fact. Let's see. Uh-oh, was that a priceless crystal of mine that you just destroyed? What a joker. So Doned doesn't want to go back because he's a cripple in real life. And you know what? Fair enough. That's a damn fine reason, far as I can tell. After some killing, it's time for the most disgusting scene in the game. Doned's been fucking with Marsh, but Marsh lures him out to talk one last time. Doned says it straight. He's not going home because here he has everything, and he's offended that Marsh, who has everything, would try to take more. But what's this? Touching music? I present to you, shaming cripples from a position of privilege. How offensive can... Let me level with you, Marsh. Your brother can't use his legs. Likely his penis, too. You're gonna complain about not being able to ask for things from your overworked divorced mom? Go fuck yourself, you entitled cretin. Please exit the planet post-haste. Literally jump. Anyway, the story has a couple more minor missions that lead to a final showdown with Ritz. The fight's kinda hard, Ritz doesn't really do anything, and she basically admits that she's wasted potential in the story. This leads into the final battle. It's a 3-parter starting with Lednar, but this time he's vulnerable, which is awesome because at this point, you really just want to cut him down for being a smarmy, insignificant, gibbering imbecile. It's nice that Sid cuts down his power, a nice little teamwork moment, you know? Though it is sad that Marsh, who's allegedly changed, according to Ritz, is unable to triumph over Lednar using his own power. Wasted potential. Killing Lednar leads to the Remedy fight. Well, Mute, what can I say? Time to take your precious mommy away from you. The last fight sucks. I have nothing to say except the following. Holy shit. You know, despite his conviction in one-liners, Marsh is still the guy who was jealous of his crippled brother, so he took him home from a fantasy world to face crippling reality. He forced his way into power and screwed over the downtrodden. Fidel Castro! Though I have to give Marsh credit for one thing. He realizes well that no matter what, changed or not, there is no real person out there that he can become. He merely is himself, and he's standing in plain sight, firmly defending his actions. That's courage and that's character progression, something he didn't do before, and he's willing to face his life. But I can't help feeling that he's got it better than most of the characters, and that pointless bravado isn't really commendable. Anyhow, the game ends from here on. For what it's worth and how little there is to the plot, it pays off. Everyone goes back to their normal lives a little bit different than before. Ritz finally accepts herself. Mute's dad finally gets a job. Marsh and Mute stand up for themselves. The game has problems, but most of my complaints are about the tangential nature of the plot, and the paternalistic protagonist we're forced to endure and assist. Though, no matter what, for me, the game will always be a special Christmas memory. And also, I can't believe we went 20 minutes without talking about this! Alright, we're ending that train wreck early. That's the end of the video, and it took an extremely long amount of time to make, so please like or subscribe or dislike or comment or any of those garbage fucking things. All of them count as Christmas presents in my eyes. Anyway, next video hopefully will be out soon, and it will likely be extremely violent.
Good way to end 2016.